kept thinking about how crowded the screen gets in this game. There's always something moving, something coming at you, and you're constantly shifting position just to stay ahead of it. A lot of the moment-to-moment play ends up being about staying composed as the space around you slowly gets smaller. That's what caught me off guard, especially considering how I even found this game in the first place. The developer describes Shell of a King as a bullet hell Souls-like, and my first reaction was skepticism. I found myself wondering how that combination would even work. I'd been seeing ads for it on Reddit, checked the Steam page, and at the time it barely had any reviews. Still, the screenshots and the trailer looked interesting, the feature list sounded ambitious, and at $4 it felt easy to give it a shot. Quick note before going further, this is still in early access, with the full launch currently planned for April 2026. The developer is highly active on Discord and regularly patches bugs reported by players, and there's already a substantial amount of content available. Shell of a King is a top-down 2.5D bullet hell RPG built around tough boss fights, build customization, an interconnected world, and an original soundtrack. It's a solo-developed project, and that context becomes clearer the longer you spend with it. So, what is the game about? The world is slowly collapsing due to something called the crumbling. It's hollowing itself out from the inside, and your role is tied to stopping that process. Storytelling stays mostly in the background. Lore comes through NPC dialogue and item descriptions, and the game never pushes you to engage deeply with it. You can piece things together if you want, or let it sit while you focus on movement, combat, and exploration. When starting the game, you choose between two difficulty settings, easy or normal. I played on a controller, which the game fully supports, and it felt right almost immediately. Directional control is smoother, dodging feels more natural, and once the screen starts filling with projectiles, analog movement makes a real difference. On easy mode, you get invincibility frames when taking damage, increased fire rate, higher health, and you don't lose coins on death, along with other adjustments that make the game more forgiving. On normal difficulty, you can take consecutive hits from projectiles, deaths carry a coin penalty, and positioning matters much more from the start. Statues act as checkpoints and progression hubs. This is where you level up stats using coins dropped by enemies, and where you equip charms. Charms have weight values, and you're limited by a maximum weight capacity, so build decisions matter. Some charms boost stats, some modify how your projectiles behave, and some function as active spells. These active charms are manually triggered and run on cooldowns, which adds timing considerations during fights. Some key items play a large role in long-term progression. There are key items used to advance the story, and others that apply passive effects immediately when you pick them up. Resting at a statue respawns normal enemies and fully restores your character, so backtracking always comes with trade-offs. Combat is built around ranged attacks. Your character auto-attacks with a long-range weapon that fires round projectiles, and you manually control the firing direction. In my case, that was handled entirely with the right thumbstick. There's a dedicated dodge roll button and no stamina system tied to it, so movement stays fluid even during longer encounters. Healing is handled through flasks. These replenish at shrines, and over time you can increase both the number of charges and how effective they are by collecting key items. Dying sends you back to the last statue you rested at, and you lose a portion of your coins in the process. From what I've seen, there isn't a way to recover what you lose. The camera plays a bigger role than it might seem at first. The world itself is fully 3D, while characters and enemies are 2D and hand-drawn. There's no jump mechanic and no vertical traversal, but rotating the camera is essential. Items, switches, and even enemies can be hidden depending on your viewing angle. During combat, you can adjust the camera to show more space ahead of your character, which helps when you're fighting from long range. Exploration is supported by a detailed map that fills in as you move through new areas. It starts completely black and gradually reveals the world. Very early on, you're given access to several different areas, and it's easy to wander into places where enemies clearly outscale you. There's a heavy emphasis on exploration. Environmental puzzles are common, and real progression is often locked behind keys or puzzle solutions. Some secrets even require specific equipment to access. Hidden rooms and false walls are scattered throughout the world, and the game consistently rewards curiosity. Boss encounters are frequent, and some of them appear when you least expect them. Most major boss fights have statues placed nearby, which makes retrying attempts quick. The bosses themselves are creatively designed. No two encounters felt the same, and some bosses change appearance as the fight progresses. Their attack patterns evolve as their health drops, and while the game leans fully into bullet hell design, the projectile layouts usually leave clear spaces to maneuver through. The music stays surprisingly calm throughout all of this. Each area has its own track, and most of them are soothing in tone. It softens the tension and makes longer sessions easier to sink into. The game features 3 different endings. I managed to reach the true ending after collecting the necessary keys. There's already a community-maintained wiki that documents areas, bosses, enemies, items, NPCs, and the different endings, and much of it has been filled out by the developer themselves. New Game Plus is also available, letting you carry over all items and levels if you want to clean up missed content or pursue a different ending. I finished my playthrough at around 11 hours. Given the price I paid, it felt more than justified. Knowing this was built entirely by one developer makes the scope feel even more impressive, and with a full launch planned for April 2026, it feels like the kind of game that's going to reach a much wider audience over time. If you've played Shell of a King, I'd like to hear how your experience lined up with mine. And if you're into digging up smaller indie games like this, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sticking around for more. I'll see you in the next one.